forefront of nutritional research, authoring more than 300 professional research papers. His legacy, the China study, which I just talked about, co-authored with his son Thomas M. Campbell, MD, has been a continuous international bestseller in its publication since 2005, and he actually had a book signing at Dave's Restaurant. He holds the position of Jacob Gould Sherman Professor Emeritus at Nutritional Biochemistry at Cornell University. He's co-authored several expert food and health policy reports, and he's lectured extensively worldwide on resolving the healthcare crisis through the little-known but remarkable effects of nutrition. So, Dr. Campbell, I want to welcome you. Thanks so much. We'd love for you to give a little talk here first, and then we're going to have people come in and ask the questions.
Okay, well, thank you, Gloria. I also want to thank all of you who were there to come and share this conversation. And it's an exciting time. I'm looking at actually this Skype picture, and it looks like you're having fun. I see some wine glasses sitting on the table. Yeah. Well, let me start out just as Gloria said. I'll just make a few remarks because I understand that you have some questions, and maybe we can learn more by asking questions and trying to answer them. I, as Gloria said, have been in this business for a long time. I actually started my graduate work at Cornell University 57 years ago, and started out at a place at that time, as many of you will know who read the book or both books. I started at that time with an idea about nutrition and what my professors were told, what they were saying, what I believed, what everyone else believed. And that was that the good old American diet was about as good as it gets, high in protein, high in fat, and so forth. And now, after all these years and having a very large experimental research program, mostly at Cornell University, lots of students and colleagues and so forth and so on, and research that was funded by the American taxpayer, I should say, the National Institutes of Health. Now I'm in a position when I have a very different view than what I did before, and I've gotten really quite enthusiastic about this, to say the least. I've learned that, for example, through our own research and research of others, that nutrition is a very powerful biological effect. We can do things with nutrition now that is basically very natural. It's eating the right food, as many of you know. And it's not about using nutrition just to prevent future diseases, some of which we've known in the past. It's actually about the same kind of nutrition actually being used to treat disease. What we're now learning is that we can actually turn off, turn down, reverse serious diseases like heart disease and diabetes, and even in my own work many years ago that got me started in this, we're able to modify cancer development in a major way, turn it on and turn it off just by nutritional means. And when I say nutritional means, nutritional strategy, I'm talking about basically the same thing. It's whole food, plant-based diet that's basically relatively low in protein, low in fat, and very high in complex carbohydrates. It's just what those foods happen to have. It's not because of those nutrients necessarily. It's everything working together in the food that causes this response. And so we can, as I say, do remarkable things that I never thought I would ever see, certainly at the beginning of my career, and I almost found it very strange to be saying these things this many years later. But it is, it's a big deal. And so I'm now well aware, as all of you are too, that we have big problems in the healthcare system, really big problems. It's very expensive. I don't need to tell you folks that. We all know that. We spend a lot of money, number one in the world, as far as per capita expenditures are concerned, and get, unfortunately, far too little in return. And there's something missing from that equation. I've just watched this debate, or maybe I should call it a shouting match, that's been going on for the last, 3 or 4 years or so, as to what to do about the healthcare problem, and we talk about healthcare reform. And what I see in this discussion, regardless what party it's coming from or who's telling it, we only tend to talk about who's going to pay the future bill. And we really don't talk about how to reduce the demand for those services. And now we know how to reduce the demand. And in a nutshell, it's all about learning about this idea of nutrition that is so, so powerful, what we can do with it. We can reverse advanced diseases, as I said before, and it all happens very quickly. And it's the same strategy for a whole range of diseases, all the way from the serious ones to the more, let's say, nuisance kind, mundane kinds like headaches and just pains from various sources and things like that. So I'm really excited about this. And I've written 2 books, as many of you may know. The first one was my son, who was actually in Chicago at the time. He had graduated in theater from Cornell. He was on stage in Chicago. And he was hoping to have a great career in the theater, but he wasn't going to make any money in that business. So he came back and worked with me and then decided to go to med school. Now he's finished up med school, finished up his residency in about 1 more month. He's doing the same thing I'm doing, or have been doing. He's coming on board. So we wrote the China study. And in the China study, we described basically, for the most part, the research that I had learned over the previous 40, 45 years at that time, and tried to put a story together to see if it really could mean anything. And it turned out that it meant a lot more, in fact, than I even thought it might, based on theory. Since that time, I've got a lot of questions about, how come we haven't heard this before? Quite frankly, medical schools don't teach nutrition. That's a serious problem. There's not a medical school in the United States that really teaches this subject. So unfortunately, our practicing primary healthcare providers are not really getting access to this information. And so, secondly, the public's very confused about the subject. The public doesn't know. And it's all very tragic. It's really tragic, and especially when this information is so powerful as what it is. And I've given about 500 lectures, nearly 500 lectures, I think, since our China study came out. Most of them now are to medical schools, including the University of Chicago Medical School and the Loyola Medical School in that area, and Northwestern, I should say, too. So maybe I'll leave it at that and just say, it's hard to summarize in 5 or 10 minutes 55 years worth of work. Well, in any case, it's really exciting. I'm involved too, and now in Europe. There's a number of European countries that have gotten really extraordinarily excited about this. We'll be going to Europe 3 times in the next, 3 or 4 months, I think, talking to actually very large groups there. And the bottom line is, we can now make a change. We can save on healthcare costs big time, really big time. I'm not talking about reducing the rate of inflation or the rate of the escalation in healthcare costs and reducing it by a few percent. I'm actually talking about if people do this right, or a significant number of people do it right. I'm talking about actually cutting back on costs. 10, 20, 30, 40, in theory, 50, 60, 70%. I'm not kidding. This is really true. We've taken individuals in groups, in fact, provided them the food that we now are having, and I'm including that my sons and I are working on this together too, as well as some others, and we can take this group of people and actually resolve their problems in no time flat, in a week or 2 or maybe 3. And the basic biology, although it's very, very complex on the one hand, and on the other hand, the message is really pretty simple, and it's applicable. We can do it. A lot of people sometimes wonder, I can't do that kind of thing, but what they forget, what we all forget, is that we are addicted to the kind of taste that we've become accustomed to over the last few decades. And one of the remarkable things that I think we've found too is that if people try this whole food plant-based diet idea, low in fat, low in protein, as I said, at first some people aren't particularly attracted to it. Not as far as taste is concerned. They say, wonder, how can I do that? I mean, it sounds like rabbit food to them, and they might try it for a while and give up. But the fact of the matter is, our taste preferences can change. High-fat diets is addictive. We know that physiologically. And it's just like any other addiction. After a month or 2 or so, we can essentially get rid of the addiction, discover new tastes, and all of a sudden, then if we try to go back and do the old deal, eat those foods from before, doesn't work. we can actually feel physiologically sick, nauseated if we're eating high-fat foods. And so that's the trick. A little bit of patience, understanding the science, taking it seriously, trying it, and the results are remarkable. So let me leave it there and take your questions, comments.
Just say a word or two about your new book that just came out.
Yeah, the China study was really about summarizing what we had learned. And I almost wrote it as much for myself as I did it for the reader, because I wasn't sure. I thought I knew what I was talking about, of course, but I wasn't sure that I could actually put it in a format that would be readable. And thanks to my son, who was a brilliant writer and helped me a lot on that, we did. We ended up telling the book the way it is. But then the question arose, how come they haven't heard that before? So the second book, Whole, is why. And I got onto this idea of why, and I'm very excited about this. It's a very different way of looking at nutrition. And I might just make one little comment. There's different ways of talking about how nutrition works. It doesn't work on a nutrient basis. That's the bottom line. That's what we all tend to think. We tend to think in what I call a very reductionist way, both in the practice of medicine and in understanding nutrition. We think on, we're always looking for magic bullets, looking at one thing at a time, and expecting to use a single kind of chemical, a drug, if you will, to treat various systemic things. And I describe nutrition as holistic, not reductionist. Holistic, everything working together in remarkable ways. And one, just to get to my point, one way of got me on to thinking about this is simply sort of, if you will, crawling inside of one of the cells in our body. I think most of you know what a cell is. It's the smallest unit of sort of living, if you will, living thing. It's in any case, we have all kinds of cells that do all kinds of things. And I'm a biochemist, and we involved ourselves in looking at the inside of cells. And it turns out that we have at least, I don't know who counted these, but we have at least 10 trillion cells in our body. Somewhere between 10 trillion and 100 trillion. And each one of these cells is really remarkable when you actually get to know the complexity of that cell. Each cell is like a universe. It's literally like a universe. The distance between things is vast, relatively speaking, as is the distance between things in our real universe looking the other way out. And so I can't help but be awed by what a cell can do, because a cell, when given the right resources, has the capability of creating health, and that's what our body wants to do all the time. If we just get out of the way and stop feeding ourselves all the sort of the nonsense that we eat, and let the body choose and do the way it wants to do things, is remarkable. So, yes, Gloria, the book about Whole is really to explain this just vast new system of thinking about what our body really does, and thinking about the cells, and thinking about, the stuff that we put there. So one book is, what is the information? The second book is, why does this behave this way? And I just finish up real quickly. Understand why helps me to explain why there's so much confusion in the public. It also explains why medical schools don't teach nutrition. And furthermore, it also explains why, that policy committees, and I served for about 20 years on expert panels and national policy committees, had a lot of work in that area. It explains why we get caught up in saying the things we do. It really is quite confusing for the public to understand this, and now I think we've unlocked the key, really, to put things in order and save on our health care costs. Big deal. That's a really big deal. So it's a very practical sort of outcome that we need to think about. Make ourselves healthy, be happy, and save on those expenses.